Welcome to today's webinar on advanced threat prevention for Office 365. We'll be talking today about our newest member of the SandBlast family, SandBlast Cloud, which protects Office 365 email. So before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, my name is Andy Feit. I'm the head of threat prevention marketing for Checkpoint, and joining me today, later on the webcast, will be Yanni Shelmerdine, who is the product manager for our Office 365 email solution, as well as some other SandBlast product line members. We also, helping us with the Q&A during the session today, we have Ohad Lipsky from our R&D group and several other members of the team. So if you do have questions today while we're going through the presentation, just enter them in the WebEx Q&A panel. We'll be answering them online. Because of the large number of attendees today, we won't be taking questions live over the phone, but we'll get back to as many questions as we can live. If we don't get to your question today, we will be responding via email. But we'll, at the end of the session, we'll probably do about 30 or 40 minutes here of overview of the product, and then we'll open it up for to ask some of the questions and answer them here today with us. So lastly, if you do have a question that you need immediate response to, you feel free to use the chat interface in WebEx as well. So what are we talking about today? Well, the reality is that as we've done a better and better job protecting our endpoints using sophisticated endpoint antivirus and other technologies, as we've protected our perimeter with advanced malware protection like IPS systems and next-gen firewalls with SandBlast and sandboxing technologies, it's become harder and harder for the hackers to get in. But a weapon of choice right now, and the one that's working best for them, is email, because everybody wants to respond to email. We all use it as a day-to-day business tool, and if they can find a way to sneak the malware in through that channel, it's hard to block it all. We can't stop everything, or we lose communication. So if they can find a way through by preventing it from getting caught, it's working. And one of the things we're seeing today is advanced social engineering and phishing messages are definitely a primary vehicle. If the bad guys can understand your organization well enough, who are your business partners, who does your accounting, who's your law firm, and send an invoice through to the right users by doing the research again up front to understand who's likely to be receiving emails from those people. They can spoof that address, send it in, it looks legitimate, and we're seeing more and more of these emails get to their target. Now, the recent Verizon Data Breach Investigations report that came out about a month or a month and a half ago had some eye-opening statistics in it. I mean, first, that nearly 30% of phishing messages were actually opened by the target. Now, some of us believe that these numbers are high. Even Verizon will acknowledge that in the report, because in some case, an email client may be marking the message as open because it's been delivered, say, to your iPhone or Android mobile device. Doesn't necessarily mean it was actually read. But in the report, they also found that 12% of these emails that were sent as phishing emails with a malicious attachment, somebody clicked on that link. Now, and with most of these, if you click on that link, you're done. I mean, the malware has had an opportunity to install itself and is now off and running. Now, a lot of people say, "Oh, this doesn't look real," they'll close it, but at that point, it may be too late. And one of the things we're working on is educating users that, if you do click on something, you need to let your instant response team know. Even if you may think you're not infected because nothing's happening, it could be there lurking in the background. And so, I mean, I think it's worthwhile to say, log a call and say, "Oh, I clicked on this email. It looks like it might not have been legitimate." Have somebody take a look at your system. But we're seeing, most of these are getting through and not being acted upon, and it's what's causing this. One of the key elements in the reason for increased incidents of ransomware that we're seeing out there in the marketplace and other forms of attack. Now, the other thing that's happening, and the reason I think a lot of you are joining us today, is organizations are moving aggressively towards cloud-based services. So a recent survey from Spiceworks, which is an IT community for administrators and IT professionals, they surveyed 350 member organizations and found that 93% were using at least one cloud-based service. Now, this isn't surprising, and I think a lot of us are using more than one, but big things like Salesforce.com for sales automation, or NetSuite, for example, for your financials, or who knows, lots of Dropbox, Box.net for sharing files and collaborating. It's no surprise that a lot of people are using a cloud-based service, but what the data also showed was that more than half of the organizations had moved already to using email hosted in the cloud. And so this is very much underway. A lot of organizations are striving to get control of what they view as a commodity. I mean, email is something we all need to have, kind of like these days, using services for a range of different technologies. Email is one of those that you can outsource pretty easily and get out of the business of managing your own Exchange servers. So as people do this, there's a big concern. 41% of the organization said that data security controls were a key consideration in moving an application to the cloud, and nearly a third of organizations said that within 2 to 3 years, the majority of their IT services will be cloud-based. So we're seeing this aggressive move to cloud-based services, and email in particular. Now, when you do move your email environment to the cloud, the challenge becomes a lot harder on you to secure it, because when it's inside your enterprise network, when you're managing your own Exchange servers, you're behind the perimeter, it's easy enough to put the protections in place to make sure that you're able to evaluate content before it gets through. So when you move to the cloud, it becomes a lot harder. As you get outside that perimeter, you don't have the control over those systems. You don't even know where they are in some cases. And so securing them and making sure that you can do the deep level of integration necessary to make sure email is safe can be a lot harder. And in the case of Checkpoint, and we have this very strong enterprise network security in form of next generation firewalls and our sandboxing technology with SandBlast. And if you've implemented those on your network, you feel very comfortable and safe that you've done the best job possible to protect. But as you move these services outside, how can we make sure we take those same strong security measures and apply them to your inbound email and environment? So now we're talking specifically today about Office 365 email, and it turns out that when you subscribe to Office 365, you get a basic signature-based protection from known threats comes included with that. So you're getting an antivirus, and this is helpful in protecting from those pieces of malware that have been seen before, and a signature is known and a behavior can be modeled. And so we can look for that, and the folks at Microsoft do that and make sure that those pieces of malware that have been seen before are not going to get through. But what we're seeing is that these solutions can't keep up with the incredible growth of unknown malware. And it used to be the case where unknown malware was rare. That most of the time if something was sent out, they were relying on people not keeping their antivirus up to date. These days, the trend is much more about taking existing malware, repackaging it, using an exploit kit or a toolkit for creating a new variant of the malware, maybe modifying the document or the payload it's attached to so that it no longer matches a signature, making slight modifications to it to create these new variants. And they essentially turn known malware into unknown malware. So you no longer need to come up with a true brand new 0-day in order to get past the security. You just need to modify it, and we're seeing that happen with an incredible level of frequency. And again, going back to that Verizon data breach investigations report, Checkpoint was a contributor to that this year. For me, the biggest piece of news in that report was the analysis of last year's malware, they found that 99% of the malware hashes were seen for less than 1 minute on the network. So what that means is that these hackers are sending out one email blast. It may be going to a few people, a company, or maybe several thousand people, but then the one they send 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later is a totally new piece of malware, so it won't match, because they know that once that first one has been successful in getting to a small number of users and infecting them, and it gets identified as malicious, it's going to get updated and it's no longer going to work. So the value of sending out tens of thousands or hundred thousands of pieces of mass spam with malware attachments has come down, but at the same time what we've seen is a much more sophisticated hacker community that is able to generate malware that may only be seen once on the network. It's one email that gets sent out and never seen again. So when this happens, it's no longer possible to protect you with your normal antivirus signature-based behavioral models. You need to go to something that's actually staying a step ahead of these and picking up advanced malware with more sophisticated defense mechanisms. Now, how do you do that when your email is no longer in-house, it's outside of your control, you don't have access to the physical systems? That's where today's product launch comes in. And SandBlast Cloud is the newest member of the SandBlast family. We'll be talking about it today and showing you exactly how it works and in your network. So the idea of SandBlast Cloud is to expand our zero-day protection, which is we launched last fall in the form of our network protection and cloud-based services, and then extended earlier this year with our endpoint protection. All of the SandBlast products are about protecting from those unknown and true zero-day attacks. A brand new attack can also be picked up, and doing that now for Office 365. So as I mentioned, in September we first launched SandBlast, our solution, which had two different deployment models. You could deploy it as an appliance in your network and protect all on-premise, and then you also had an option to use the checkpoint gateways in our cloud service so that you didn't have to deploy your own sandboxing technology. In either case, they're using the same underlying SandBlast solution set for emulating files and doing threat extraction to clean them. Now, in February, we launched a version of this to protect even when you're beyond the perimeter, so remote users or other use cases where the malware may not cross the boundary. So, for example, a USB removable memory, removable storage device, you're not going to catch that if you're simply monitoring at the perimeter. So, by installing SandBlast Agent on endpoints, you also pick up a range of different threat vectors that can now be blocked. The new SandBlast Cloud email fits right in this solution stack, now protecting a primary entry vehicle for malicious software in your environment, so your Office 365 email environment. So how does it work? Well, basically, it's the same underlying technology, but now delivered for advanced threat prevention for Office 365. We focused very much on making this a fast and transparent user experience. It was important that we not introduce significant delay in delivering email, and that we not ask our users to undertake special steps in order to secure their content. This should all happen without anybody even knowing what's going on behind the scenes. And that applies not only to the end users, but also to the folks that are managing this. So when organizations move email from an in-house on-premise environment to the cloud, one of the big reasons for that is to reduce the overall cost of managing it, reduce the complexity of deploying it, and we, in introducing the SandBlast Cloud email security platform, we didn't want to change that. We wanted it to fit right in with that deployment model and overall management. So as you'll see as we go through here, I think we've done a great job of that, and if you're familiar with managing your email, you're going to be very comfortable managing the security for it in using a very similar set of tools. So when we talk about protecting email, there are two main elements that we're looking to control. One is email attachments. So one of the ways that malware gets in is a message that looks legitimate with an attachment PDF or a Word doc or an Excel file that looks legitimate, and the user is convinced to click on it and open. So to protect from this, we do a few key things. And first of all is antivirus, so that if that attachment is known to be malicious, it's been seen before and caused problems, we can block that very easily without even doing a lot of analysis on it. The second piece is for common document formats. And a major source of today's malware is attaching a PDF or a Word document. We're going to do threat extraction on it, which removes the dynamic content. So we'll remove malware that may be in the form of macros or scripts, any kind of dynamic content that might be in that file. We can remove it and still present the user with a view of the document very, very quickly. And then lastly is threat emulation. This is where we're going to open the files in a sandboxing environment and analyze them completely to understand what they're actually doing on a system and make sure it doesn't get through. Now, the other risk set to email is actually content inside of the message. So there may not be an attachment. There might just be a URL, a link to a site, and that site has some sort of drive-by malware present on it, or malvertising in a flash banner that you don't know about. And just by visiting the page, you've introduced malicious software on your system. And so we're going to evaluate that using URL reputation techniques. And then even if there's a link to a file inside of the message, so the file's not attached, but the URL leads directly to a file, so a link to a Word document, a PDF, an Excel, a PowerPoint, we'll actually evaluate those files and test them as well before delivering them. So this whole thing protects all of your inbound messages, and it's done using a completely cloud-based solution. So there's no hardware to buy. You set up your Office 365 email environment to communicate with the Checkpoint SandBlast cloud servers, and we'll be notified as messages come in, and we'll evaluate them. That deployment and setup, connecting to our servers takes under 5 minutes to configure it, set up your users, and turn it on. And then, as Yanni will show you in just a few minutes, it introduces no delays and doesn't affect any uptime. You don't even have to bring your email down in order to turn it on. So it's important to understand also this idea of multi-layered protection, because the reality is that no one solution is going to catch all of the potential threats that are out there. So by checking all of these, doing, first of all, URL reputation checking. So if a site that is linked inside of the email message or inside of an attachment is malicious and has been known to host malicious content in the past, and it's been flagged, its reputation is bad, we're not going to let users get there. We'll remove those links and simply tell them that a link has been blocked because it was to a malicious site. We run the antivirus so that known threats, the threats that we've seen before, will not get through to any of your users. We'll do that threat extraction. This is a very safe, quick way to give users visibility to the documents. They can work with the content that they've been sent, but without providing the malware an opportunity to run anything that might be malicious. And then lastly, because not everything is a Word document or PDF, there may be forms of malware that are harder to extract, and how do you can't create a view of an executable, for example. Well, we're going to evaluate all of those types of files, more than 40 different file formats using our sandboxing environment. And this will look at not just the attachments, but also any files that are directly linked from within the email message. So with these multiple layers, we're able to catch different types of malware that may be targeting your organization and prevent them from ever reaching your users. Now, the key element in here that may be new for some of you is this SandBlast technology. And the idea of SandBlast is really to take two key elements. The first is threat emulation, or sandboxing, and evaluate content. And we do that in a unique way that delivers the highest catch rate. And this has been tested by a number of different research organizations who independently evaluate different technologies for malware analysis. And SandBlast has been consistently achieved the highest scores on catch rate, and we'll show you some of this data in a minute. One of the keys to that is our CPU level detection engine, which we launched last year, and that provides an ability to detect not only behaviorally, but actually looking at malware as it's attempting to get a foothold in your system. We'll show you how that works as well in just a second. The second key element, however, to SandBlast is the proactive prevention. And this is important because a lot of sandboxing technology that's been out there in the marketplace has been deployed in a detect mode. It's in parallel with the content. So because it takes time to evaluate files in a sandboxing environment, and people did not want to, organizations didn't want to delay delivery of content, they would deploy it in just a detection mode. So they'd let the file through and then begin analyzing it in the sandboxing environment. If it turned out to have a problem, they'd go chase it down. They'd say, oh, let's issue an alert, notify the response team, and they'd try and reach the user before they open the message, for example. But at that point, it's too late. Software may be installed, and the malware has had a chance to install. It may even have spread to other machines if it's capable of lateral movement, for example. And so to be able to deploy proactively in a prevention mode to block content, you need to know that files are going to be delivered quickly, and that's what threat extraction does. For the common document formats, it creates a reconstructed safe version of the file and displays that to the user, and it's removed any of the potentially malicious elements. And it does this in about a second, and users get their file, they can look at it, and most of the time that's all they really need. And then in the background, we'll still run the full emulation and notify users and allow users to retrieve the original document if it's deemed safe. SandBlast is very efficient and fast because we're doing this CPU level detection up front. We're catching things before they're running, they've had a chance to install, and the speed of threat extraction allows us to maintain the business flow. So if someone sends you an email, you're going to have it right there in front of you with no noticeable delay at all. Now, since introducing SandBlast last year, there's been, as I mentioned, a number of different tests. The most recent of those, Forrester, major industry analyst, did a very thorough analysis of what they call a wave report on advanced malware analysis tools, looking at all the major vendors in this segment and scoring them on more than 30 different criteria, including things like catch rate and methods of deployment and a whole range of different options. Checkpoint received the highest overall score. We're tied for the top score overall, and we have the top score in strategy based on the solution that Forrester reviewed. And so, we're really excited about that. You can get a copy of that report from our site. If you go to the SandBlast page on checkpoint.com, you can download it. Last year, NSS Labs, a third-party testing organization that uniquely in the marketplace actually creates their own malware. They put it in a lab. They install all of the actual products. If the vendors provide them to them, they'll use those. If they don't, they'll go out and acquire them. They really do a very thorough job, and they analyze a range of different vendors, and they came up with their recommendations for best vendors from a security value perspective, so based on security effectiveness and on total cost of ownership. And we're very pleased that we were one of the recommended vendors, and in fact the leading vendor in total cost of ownership. So we had, of all the recommended vendors, we're right at the top in security effectiveness and at the lowest overall total cost of ownership. So those are just two of the recent awards. You see some of the others here on the slide, including Meyercom's recent testing. They evaluated Checkpoint to have the highest catch rate of all systems tested. Now, quickly, how does a sandbox work? Most of you probably know this. The idea here is, if somebody sends an email with an attachment or a link that's pointing to a file that's going to be opened if you click on it, we're going to open those files and detonate them, basically act as a user might, opening it and looking how it works in the system. Now, we'll run it in a safe, contained virtual machine, so it's separate from your network. So if that file happens to contain something like ransomware, we'll see it doing that just in a virtual environment, not on your real files. And we'll monitor what's happening. If there are any changes to file systems, so ransomware encrypting your content, or changes to your system registry, network connections to known staging servers where data is attempting to be exfiltrated, all of these activities that we know to be malicious, we'll watch for that. And if we see anything happening, we're going to hold that file and not allow it to reach the user. Now, as sandboxing has become more widespread, the bad guys have learned to expect it, and what they've done is almost a cat and mouse game here of constantly creating new evasion techniques, and the sandboxing vendors like ourselves and others will put in place ways to work around that. So they might, for example, attempt to see if they're running in a virtual environment. They'll look and see, is this a real PC or is this a VM that I'm running in? And we can try and hide from that and create fake environments that answer those queries and tell you that you're on a real system. They'll try and do things like delaying the attack by a matter of days, weeks, even, I'm not going to run this malware until the second Tuesday on an even date 2 months or more from now. And you're not going to run your sandbox for hours and months and try and do this. But again, we have our own tricks as vendors to accelerate the clock and move time forward and try different dates and try and pick up these evasion techniques. They'll look for different operating system versions or variants. Have you installed this service pack or this fix? And if it's not there, they'll assume, they'll only run if it's there, or they won't run if a fix is there. So they'll try and limit the ability for the sandbox to discover it, including using encrypted channels. So they'll send the content with a password at the user's first name, and if that's the case, we're not going to know what that is and be able to open it in a sandboxing environment. So as this has happened, more and more malware is getting past sandboxes, and that NSS Labs test that I mentioned, some of the top vendors in sandboxing were finding 30 and 40% of the evasion techniques were working against them. Now, they weren't working in Checkpoint and against our SandBlast system, and I'll show you why. So to understand this, we'll take a quick look at the kill chain in getting malware to be installed on a system. So the first piece of that is looking for a vulnerability in some piece of application software, whether it's the operating system or a browser, Microsoft Word, or Adobe Flash. You're going to look for a way to reach in through that piece of software and install your exploit in memory and get it to run on the system. Now, modern day processors have many controls that limit the ability for an application to just install itself in memory and look executable. There are a number of techniques used to prevent that inside of modern era processors, and so it's become tricky to do that. And if you look at the vulnerabilities and the exploits, there are thousands of different ways into software, and if they've been patched, you may not be able to get access to a particular system. But even if you can get through, there's only a few ways to exploit it. And the next step for the hacker is to use that exploit to install a small piece of code, the shell code. And all those shell code's job is really to do is retrieve the actual malware. Now, that malware may be packaged with the payload. So, for example, part of the PDF file or the Excel file, it's stored in there. Or it may be just a link to a network location to retrieve it from a command and control server. But there are millions of types of malware. So, you kind of go through this chain, and you see that the logical point to block this would be at the most narrow point, and that's at the exploit stage. But very importantly, the ability to do this evasion, in order to do sophisticated evasion code, you need access to a pretty complete library of software. And at those early stages of the vulnerability, you're working with very small pieces of code that won't give you that capability. It's only after you've been able to download the live malware that you can start looking for VMs and doing looking for keystrokes from a user or mouse clicks and trying to determine if there's a real user behind it. And so most malwares operating, or most sandboxes are operating at this bottom level, watching the malware once it's already gone through this whole process, it's installed on your system, and seeing if it's behaving properly or not. And if it's not, we're going to block it. But SandBlast, with our CPU level detection engine, is capable of actually picking this up at the exploit level. So what we're doing is we're watching the execution flow of the application as it's running, and there are certain techniques like return-oriented programming that will indicate the presence of malicious code. No normal software would ever be doing some of these activities, and almost all malware, if it's going to try and exploit your system, will go through some of these steps. So by looking for those traces in memory and in the execution flow, we can pick that up. This allows us to catch it earlier, before the malware is even downloaded, so it's fast, but also before the evasion code can execute. So we're much more resistant to the techniques that hackers are using. The bottom line here is with the patented CPU level exploit detection that's in SandBlast, and along with, we're still running all of those operating system level sandboxing techniques as well as static and heuristic engines. We're doing full analysis. That's what gives us this highest catch rate and has been yielding these best results in real bake-offs at customers, but also in the third-party testing labs. That evasion resistance, the performance is very, very fast, and that CPU level detection is unique to Checkpoint. We actually were issued a patent on it earlier this year. So if you want to be protecting the best way possible, you're at the right place here with Checkpoint. So I'm going to turn it over now to Yanni to talk a little bit more about how the system actually works and how you set it up in your Office 365 environment. Yanni, over to you.
Hi, Andy. Sorry, thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. Like Andy was saying, the two main elements of SandBlast Cloud are the level of security and the simplicity of use. And I mean, I won't go over why it's so critical. I mean, it really is obvious that when bringing a security solution to Office 365, we had to make sure that these two elements were integrated. Now, I've been seeing a lot of the questions, and a lot of them are about how you install it. And the first and most important thing is, we're an API-based solution, not a cloud-based MTA. So when you install SandBlast Cloud, there's no downtime. It takes 2 to 3 minutes, and you're running. And the way we provide security is we receive a notification in real time as soon as the email arrives to the Office 365 servers. And we can immediately take that email and place it in a secure quarantine folder within each and every inbox. Now, what that allows us to do is take both the attachments and the body of the email, so looking for the URLs which are inside the mail, and send them to our SandBlast inspection service. Now, the inspection service, as Andy mentioned, performs threat emulation and threat extraction and antivirus on the attachments and looks at the URLs within the email. Threat extraction will provide the user with, like Andy said, a clean version of the document so they can view it immediately while the attachment is going through threat emulation in the background. Now also, because the static checks, both of the URLs and the antivirus checks for the attachments are also very, very fast, the extracted version is already post those checks as well. So the user will receive a clean version of their email with no potentially malicious links and attachments with no potentially malicious content, while the original attachment is being analyzed in the background. Now, it must be said that from our statistics, around 98% of the time, people never feel the need to access the original version of their document, but naturally, we do allow that to happen if they'd like. For instance, departments like accounting or legal that need specific types of macro, for example, we won't expect them to have to access the original each time, and you'll be able to create a policy that will allow them to get their files without changing the security for everyone else. Now, the general idea is if you do need to access the original, it will be accessible within a few clicks unless it's malicious. Now, from a user perspective, we'll make sure to allow configurable options that will either change the subject of the email, will add a little line at the top of the email that will let the user know that it had potentially malicious content, and will also remove the malicious attachments if we find them to be malicious. Now, threat extraction is a concept that some of you might be less familiar with, so I'll just display it very, very quickly here. The idea is to, as Andy said, give you a rapid version of the document that will allow you to understand what it's about, read everything that's there, perhaps not interact with it with all the ways you'd like, but it will allow you to keep the business flowing. Now, having a slight technical difficulty here, it should be coming up. Now, users will see that their file has either been cleaned or converted, depending on the policy choice. We enable threat extraction to either clean documents and retain them in the original format or convert them to PDF. The levels of security are slightly different. Converting to PDF is the more secure option, but over the past few months, we've drastically improved the level of security that cleaning the document provides. It really is a matter of 1 or 2%. Now, again, like I said, if you do want to access the original, it will be within just a few clicks. To sum it up, again, we won't need to go into this in too much detail. We want to make sure that our solution integrates with Microsoft Office 365 and isn't a hindrance to your business. We realize that moving to the cloud, the idea is to make things flexible and fast, and we wanted to make sure that our solution does exactly that. Now, finally, something that we haven't talked about too much yet is, apart from security and flexibility, we want to make sure that the solution provides as much actionable information as possible to the administrator. So when a threat comes in, we want you to know about it. We want you to be able to see who it came from, when it came from, what type of malware it was, and make sure that you understand what the malware was doing so you can try and protect yourself even better in the future. Whether it's blocking specific emails from sending you mails at all or creating specific policies, everything about the way we present threat events within the SandBlast Cloud web portal is about making it as actionable as possible. And like we've said multiple times, it really does take, and I'll show you just how to do it in a few minutes, setting it up takes less than 2 minutes. No downtime, maximum reliability. So I'll go over this in just briefly for the moment and go into detail in a few minutes. From a product configuration perspective, it's all done with a very, very easy to use wizard. We provide you with a customizable security overview. That's the home page of our web portal. The overview will show you how many emails have been coming in, how many have been scanned, how many attachments, how many URLs, what the main domains that are attacking you are, what the main types of malware that are trying to attack your systems are, everything that you need to know at just a quick glance to know what the state of your security is. This is sort of like something that you can look at a few times a day and see where you are compared to last week, give you a general idea. We realize that in many cases that won't be enough, and we also provide a detailed log viewer that will allow you to view and investigate every single security event, whether you want to do it immediately or in retrospect. So this will allow you to see every single event and understand as much as possible about it. Now, for those of you who are familiar with our network SandBlast capabilities, you'll know that we provide a dedicated emulation report for each and every file that has gone through threat emulation. Now, this report will show you what the file was doing when it was in the sandbox. So whether it was running specific processes, when it was touching specific registry keys, where it copied itself, where it was deploying additional files, and various other elements that, for example, when looking at ransomware, will help you understand exactly what type of file is attacking you. And this is something that we also wanted to make sure doesn't throw 10,000 lines of code at you. We don't want you to have to delve through tens of hundreds, maybe thousands of lines of registry keys that a certain file was doing. We made sure that this dedicated report is also ready and easy to read by someone other than a trained security specialist. Now, again, deployment can really be summed up into two stages. The first is connecting your Office 365 account to SandBlast Cloud, and the second is selecting whether you want to detect or prevent malware from coming in. Now, as a question that's come up multiple times, the solution itself can be deployed for either your entire organization or a select subset of mailboxes. The price, both the price, the licensing, and the security will be identical. So you can, if you'd like to try it out for a subset of mailboxes, that's fine. You won't affect your other mailboxes in any way. So a brief display of how to install the solution once you've purchased it or once you've started the demo. Now, once you're in the web portal, so within the portal itself, you'll create a new policy for your Office 365 account. You'll receive a quick wizard that will show you how to connect your Office 365 account to SandBlast Cloud. Essentially, it's pressing new policy, granting checkpoint access to your Office 365 account. This is something that will direct you to a Microsoft Online page where all you have to do is click accept, and that's it. It really is 3 steps, and you're running the highest level of advanced threat prevention in the market on your email. Within 3 clicks, no downtime whatsoever. Now, it's worth mentioning that because we're based on a Microsoft API, it's essentially like trusting Microsoft, because if you already decided to trust them with your email, there really is no reason why you shouldn't trust their API more than anything else. I think the best way to sum it up is to go back to this slide. The 3 pillars of our solution are bringing the most advanced threat prevention that we can, ensuring that the whole experience, both for the users and the administrators, is as fast as transparent as possible and both as informational as possible. And finally, the fact that it's so easy to deploy, so easy to manage, and so easy to use is, for us, it's like the icing on the cake. And we really are proud of the solution and excited to get people using it.
All right, thanks, Yanni. Great overview. So once again, if you do have questions, please enter them in the Q&A tab now. We've had a large number of questions coming in, so we'll take a moment here to answer those. But just to wrap up, as Yanni said, we're very excited about this product. It extends the industry-leading sandboxing technology, threat extraction technology that's been part of SandBlast, to an environment that we see more and more of our customers and new customers moving to, and that's the Office 365 email. So if you want the best protection for your Office 365 environment, it really is now available to you at the easiest, most simple way to deploy and the highest levels of protection available. So let's go ahead and open it up to some questions. We're going to ask Jen to join us and ask some of the questions, and whoever feels best ready to answer it will jump in here and reply. So Jen, over to you.
Thank you. The first question is there an override option in the event of a false positive?
Yes, well, the administrator will have the option to both view the file that has been deemed malicious, and will also ensure that he has the capability to return it to the inbox.
Thank you. How is SandBlast SandBlast Cloud going to be licensed and priced?
It will be priced per seat, per year. So it will be a flat price per mailbox per year, regardless of the number of users. So whether you've purchased protection for 10 mailboxes or 10,000, it will be the same price. The current price will be $18 per mailbox. That is still subject to change, but for the moment, that's the price per seat. This is annual price.
How does this solution compare to Microsoft's advanced threat prevention product for Exchange Online?
The main difference.
Oh,
yeah, Andy, would you like to take this?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Yanni. You've been answering all the questions so far. Yeah, I think the key difference there is your Checkpoint and some of the other security vendors. This is all we do. We're laser-like focused on security. So we're learning from the experiences at tens of thousands of different customers who are using our solutions, and through our threat cloud, this is all we do is security. So when you look at these tests that are run by people like NSS Labs and Meyercom, they're not even really testing the solutions from the broader widespread vendors like a Microsoft. They're looking at the dedicated solutions that are aimed at protecting from malware. So this is what we do, and we're going to find that we have a higher protection rate, a better catch rate, but you'll also see that some of those unique capabilities like threat extraction, like CPU level detection, they're not going to be available in the even Microsoft's advanced product. But again, we are working closely with Microsoft, and the idea of doing this integration at the API level is to make it just as easy or even easier to deploy than the solutions you might get directly from them, but provide that higher catch rate and a very easy way to manage it. I'll also add that for existing Checkpoint customers who are using our environment for managing their security, so smart event, smart log servers that you may be using in your environment, the events that you saw showing up in the web portal for Office 365, the cloud solution, can also be sent to that solution. So they'll be fully integrated inside of Smart Event, and you'll be able to see all of your incidents and track them and manage them all in one place.
Does the customer only need the SandBlast cloud license? Do they need any additional hardware or Checkpoint gateway or management in addition?
No, not at all. It's 100% cloud-based, and the only connection to an on-premises solution would be if you'd like to integrate it with your on-premises logs. If you would like to remain 100% cloud-based, that's your prerogative, and you don't require any hardware.
We have several domains in our tenant. Does this protect them all?
Yes, that's definitely possible. It'll be just a matter of connecting multiple accounts. So you'll be going through, within your management portal, you'll be going through that wizard 3 times, depending on, for instance, if you have 3 domains, you'll be going through that the same number of times, and you'll be able to create different rules for different domains, but it'll all be run from the same screen.
If installing into an existing Office 365 environment with populated mailboxes, are only the new emails scanned, or will it examine existing emails as well?
That's something that we haven't come across yet as a request. It is theoretically possible, but again, it's the first time that we've heard that request. It's something that we'd be happy to look into for a specific situation.
But basically right now, Yanni, we're only evaluating newly received messages. That's correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Can you secure other Microsoft environments like OneDrive, SharePoint, etc.?
Essentially, we can and do, so we do plan to add those capabilities in the future. That's definitely on our roadmap. When we were choosing where to start, we identified Office 365 email as the most critical and the most important to address first, and we'll be addressing both additional mail services and other elements of Office 365 like OneDrive and SharePoint in the future.
Great. Is it possible to test the SandBlast Cloud solution as a trial or through the EA program?
Yes, absolutely. We'll be happy to receive additional EA candidates who would like to try out the solution. At the moment, it's a slightly manual process, but that will also become much more automatic in the very near future. You can either contact the email which appears at the end of the deck. Here, I think it's the next slide. Or I'll leave my email at the bottom of the chat box if that for some reason doesn't work, and we'll make sure you get connected to someone that will set you up with a demo account.
So I'll just add, I think setting the expectations for the timeline, we are in our early access program now, so we have many customers who are using it. If you would, as Yanni said, if you'd like to join that program and give us feedback on the user interface or the experience and that you're seeing, we'd love to add you to that program. We will be shipping in general availability here in the next 1 to 2 months. So, pending obviously feedback from those cycles as well as our own quality assurance testing.
Can the logs from the dashboard be pulled into other platforms, specifically a local SEIM?
So as I mentioned, you can absolutely pull them into SmartEvent, and from there, generally there are integrations with most of the major SIM platforms to be able to share log data. So there's nothing special about these logs from that perspective. We have made it easy to, you don't have to set up anything if you want to simply view the logs inside of the web portal. If you want to view it inside of SmartEvent, that integration is already done, and any other integrations that you wanted to do could come through the existing ways that people share logs with our existing platforms.
How does this solution compare against alternatives like Proofpoint and Mimecast?
Yanni, you want to take that one?
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to. Again, it comes down to 2 vectors. The first, and definitely the most significant, is security. We have security capabilities and detection capabilities that no one else has, whether it's the fact that we're using threat extraction, whether it's CPU level detection. We just have capabilities that other people don't, and we do have the tests and the customer bake-offs to prove it. From a usability perspective, we also find our solution to be much easier to install and more informative to use. And I think those 3 things are what differentiates us from the crowd.
I'll take a couple more questions, Jen, and then we'll wrap up.
If the downloaded files are larger than 30 meg, are they still checked by threat emulation?
Yes, that is configurable, and we can support, I believe, files up to 50 megs, though I will check that just to make sure with one of our R&D experts tomorrow and get back to you if that's incorrect.
And one last one here. Is there any way of ensuring that the cloud service does not send data to a particular country? There are requirements in my region that would not allow me to send confidential data to the United States due to concerns about the Patriot Act, for example.
That's something that is definitely planned to be integrated very, very shortly. And there are manual things that we can do on a very sort of ad hoc basis at the moment. But yes, that's definitely something that we will be offering.
All right, thanks, Yanni, for joining us today and sharing some of the product with us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on today's webinar. I hope you found it valuable. And as we said, if you're interested in a demonstration, the email address on your screen, threat_prevention_sales@checkpoint.com, will go to our dedicated specialists in threat prevention. Somebody will get back to you. If you'd like to join that EA program or just get an evaluation account that you'd like to try out a few mailboxes, we can work with you on that as well. So that's really the best way. I mean, this is a product that, you know, seeing is believing. It's easy to install. You'll get that feeling as you go through it. We'd love for you to try it out, use it, and see how it works. And we look forward, you know, to having you evaluate the product and ultimately decide to help secure your Office 365 email with Checkpoint SandBlast Cloud. So thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.